I'm Jyoti Kathpalia, and I'm the convener for this colloquium. S.H. Raza's life was defined by love, tolerance, faith, modesty, altruism. He left behind a foundation to replenish and fulfill the dreams of many. These vibrations, profound thoughts, positive actions, everything Raza epitomized, are celebrated and sustained by the Raza Foundation under the able guidance of its managing trustee, Ashok Vajpayee, former civil servant, administrator, eminent writer, essayist, poet, cultural critic, and art lover. It is only befitting that in this forum, the youth, the younger art historians speak and find a platform to present their ideas in critical research. Saptak, convened by the Raza Foundation, advances rigorous inquiry in art history while foregrounding the voices that will shape its future. This colloquium is a part of Raza Foundation's ongoing commitment to serious engagement with art and culture and its vision to encourage upcoming younger writers, art historians, art critics. The contributions of eminent modern artists continue to shape the trajectory of Indian art, and in recognition of their tremendous impact, this colloquium comprises of 7 sessions across 2 days. Of course, the 7 masters that we are looking at, I'm just giving a small introduction to the conference. M.F. Husain, S.H. Raza, F.N. Souza, Kumar, V.S. Gaitonde, Krishen Khanna, and Tyeb Mehta. Notably, 2025 marks the centenary of both Krishen Khanna and Tyeb Mehta, making this an extremely and especially meaningful moment to reflect on their legacy and on the broader impact of India's modern masters. This year we have 22 paper presenters from all across India. We have 8 to 10 resource people, and I'm really happy to welcome everybody here, all the audience, the resource people, and of course our keynote speaker and everyone else. For the inaugural session, I invite Mr. Ashok Vajpayee as chair, Ms. Yashodhara Dalmia as the keynote speaker, and Mr. Rohan Yadav to please come.
Oh, this has to be removed about. Yes. No, I'll speak and then you present. I will invite you. Friends, on my own behalf and on behalf of the Raza Foundation, we welcome you to this new initiative. It's part of the vision and taste of Raza Sahib himself, who thought the foundation must devote itself largely to nurturing the younger generation. And we try to do so in many fields, including visual arts, literature, music, dance, and ideas. In literature, for instance, we have been organizing a colloquium of young Hindi writers since 2013. And we already have 12, and the 13th will be scheduled next March. We run a series of recitals by young musicians and young dancers called Arambh. And this is now the new initiative. It so happens that Raza Foundation will be completing 25 years of its existence early next year. So as our Silver Jubilee celebrations, this is the first event. There will be an event later in February and March, an international poetry festival, and several such. We also want to start a colloquium of young music, performing arts writers. It's much more difficult. So, Saptak, we thought 17 persons who are dead and gone, but who have also completed 100 years of their life. So, here you are. And we requested Jyoti Kathpalia to put together. We invited abstracts and things of that kind from possible paper writers, art writers, and on the basis of their abstracts we selected and then requested them. Unfortunately, half of them are yet to be here. Hopefully they are on their way. Because most of them are from outside Delhi, they do not have a clear idea as to how difficult it in Delhi is to reach in time. I am 85 years old, so I decided to leave my home at 9:30. I have never been late to anything in my life. I hope I'll be late only for my death, but I don't know when it would have to happen. The idea is that we are living in a time of great amnesia. We don't seem to remember, obsessed as we are with the utterly contemporary, we don't seem to remember the things that happened earlier. That modernism, or whatever you like to call it, did not start the other day. It started several decades ago. And these 7 masters at one time constituted a group called Progressive Artists Group. Not all of them were formal members, but they were all together. It is an unprecedented group of artists, not only in India, but perhaps in the world. No single group of artists produced so many major figures, path-breaking, innovative, daring, etc. There were other groups contemporaneous to this one and later, but none of them can boast of so many masters at a go. Akbar Padamsee and Bal Chawla, they were also part of since their birth centenary had not yet come, although both of them qualify both by their art and by the fact that they're both dead. The other thing is to make young art writers concentrate on at least one of the masters of the past. And while I was going through the abstract, we have all given you a copy of Richard Bartholomew's book, The Art Critic. I'm quite surprised that none of the papers mentions Richard Bartholomew. None of them also mentions Nissim Ezekiel. These were the people who initially or wrote about many of these masters. So there is, you are of course mentioning Yashodhara Dalmia, who's here, and Geeta Kapoor, and Tapti, Thakur, whatever the name, who are all later phenomena. So there is an artistic tradition, art critical tradition, which we must, as art writers, inherit, remember, and get some insights from. Secondly, it is not as if modern art is an interruption. It has to be seen in a continuity, as a continuum of memory and creativity and imagination. There's a lot of aesthetic thinking about music, dance, theatre, visual arts in our own tradition, both the so-called Indian tradition and also the Persian tradition. In fact, we have funded a book, not a book, but a fellowship which brought about the book, Sources of Indian Art, edited by B.N. Goswami, which is published by Penguins or whoever, or OUP perhaps, and it collects together. Now, barring one abstract which mentions some of these concepts, it seems young art writers do not find anything in our tradition which can insightfully, innovatively, imaginatively use to understand or analyze art, which I think is, to say the least, is an intellectual bankruptcy, to put it in strong words. So, anyway, this is the, I will have more to say later. We want to use this occasion also to, not only to listen to you, but also that you should listen to others. We are in a situation when nobody listens to anybody else. People love their voices so much, from the top to the bottom there. So one of the rules that is going to be in this colloquium is everybody would attend every single session. There is no let go. You can't be making a star present your paper and then disappear. If you disappear, you will also disappear from our horizon. We won't bother you anymore. This is one. The second point is that we have only 1.5 days, and we have a large agenda. There are 21 paper writers. They are eminent mentors, chairpersons who will be presiding over these sessions, their comments, their vision, their views. So, a time schedule has been worked out, and you have been asked to present how many minutes?
15.
15. You shall not transgress this limit. If you are an art writer, you should know that how to present your views in 15 minutes. I had a teacher in my school days and who used to tutor me when I started public speaking. His time limit was much less. He used to say what you want to say in 10 minutes. If you are not able to say it 10 minutes, you will not be able to say it in 100 minutes. And also, he used to use a domestic phrase in Hindi. He used to say, "Lota bhar do, balti bhar mat udeyo." So don't pour the bucket. Give only a small glassful. So you have ideas, and you have surely studied these artists, so you're bubbling with ideas. There are many ideas, but you should have already done that exercise. If you haven't done it, you can do it while you are listening to others, and create a small 15-sharp presentation. We are very grateful to many people, Jyoti Kathpalia, of course, who had helped us put this together, and there are other people, Meera Banerjees, Yashodhara Dalmia, some others will be joining us later, Husain Vajpayee. So, may I request now, Yashodhara, you'll speak first, or he speaks first?
Let me give an overview.
Okay, fine.
And Rohan can speak.
Yeah, so this is to talk about the 7 together, and Yashodhara is most qualified. She is one of our most eminent art critics, has expertise and vision about these 7 artists, which are quite unique, insightful, and in some ways these were the views which have formed our own view of these artists. So, Yashodhara Dalmia.
I'll just take those papers.
Oh, please.
So, thank you, Ashok ji, for your kind words. Friends, I will be speaking about one of the most important modernist groups which shaped our modern art. The origins of this group actually started a century before it was formed. In an ironical twist of history, the paradigms for modernity in Indian art were formed in the very decade that saw a violent uprising in large parts of the country. Can I be heard?
Yes.
The 1850s, or the decade when the mutiny or the first war of independence took place, was also the period when the consolidation of British rule and increased prosperity and the setting up of the first steam railways between Bombay and Thane had created the climate for enhancing liberal education. The art colleges which were established in different cities in the 1850s, 1857 I think was the J.J. School of Art, attempted to train students to accurately translate reality in the tradition of academic art. By the 1950s, a century later, the shackles of naturalistic art were overthrown by a handful of artists who called themselves the Progressive Artists Group. The attempt to raise consciousness had also manifested itself in different cultural streams during this time. Along with the progressive artists, there was the Progressive Writers Group with members like Mulk Raj Anand and Sardar Jafri and their bold new directions. The Indian People's Theatre Association, which made an impact with memorable plays like Jafri's Ye Kiska Khoon, Whose Blood Is This? And Balraj Sahni's Jadoo Ki Kursi, The Magic Chair, which depicted social evils and their consequent ill effects on the masses. These were heady days for Bombay cinema, with unforgettable films like Achut Kanya, The Untouchable Girl, and Devdas, which spoke of romantic love as against the barriers of relationships introduced by issues of caste and class. It was a climate of awakening, and although the progressive artists did not consciously conjoin with any of these groups, the spirit of breaking new paths was palpable. At this juncture, the presence of Europeans in Bombay, some of them war emigres, proved crucial to bringing about an art consciousness. Walter Langhammer, the art director of the Times of India, Bombay, had left Vienna with his wife and reached India in 1938. A former art teacher in Vienna, he held regular discussions with the artists and exposed them to many new trends current in Europe. Rudolf von Leyden, the art critic of the Times of India, who had arrived from Germany in the early 1930s, provided constructive criticism in these times. He was known to cycle down to the press after the opening of a show so that he could write the review on the same day. E. Schlesinger, an owner of a pharmaceutical firm who had left behind his art collection in Germany, also helped the artists by buying their work. Now, the rise of the Nazis, for all the havoc it wrought, provided for India the timely presence of Europeans in India who gave support and direction to the creative endeavors of the progressive artist group. The dawn of modernism was to presage forms of art in India which arose because of the transformation in consciousness and an awareness of the selfhood of the nation. This was also to come about because of a fervent desire to forefront a path keenly motivated by individualism. The movements which emerged as a result altered the mimetic and picturesque quality that existed into a flowering of an art of great imaginative power. The whole drama of modernity is revealed while tracing the development of these artists. I might add that there were two major shows which also made their work widespread and popular. One was at the inauguration of the NGMA in 1996 in Bombay, which had the show The Moderns, curated by me. And the second was a major show at the Asia Society in 2018, curated by the director of the Asia Society, Bon Hui Than, who is no longer with us, and Zehra Jumabhoy. So these made it widespread in India as well as internationally. If modernism made its way historically and culturally via Europe, it also found its own métier and substance locally. The diverse forms of modernism cannot merely be seen as implants of the West, for surely the center for modernity exists within each country in a pivotal form. For modernity reinvents itself and acquires new contours at each location. The most forceful of these groups, the Progressive Artists Group, founded in 1947, was coincidentally in the very year that India gained independence. The group, which was unknown, relatively poor, with little means at their disposal, forged a common front which would root modern art in India and inscribe it on the international forum. the group, consisting of F.N. Souza, M.F. Husain, S.H. Raza, K.H. Ara, S.K. Bakre, and H.A. Gade, critiqued the outmoded practices of art schools and rejected outright the revivalist approach of the Bengal school. Bhanu Rajapadhyayani Athaya was the one woman member in the group. She became well known later as the costume designer for the film Gandhi. Closely associated with the PAG, as I shall now refer to them, were artists like Krishen Khanna, Tyeb Mehta, Akbar Padamsi, Ram Kumar, and V.S. Gaitonde. As I mentioned, the PAG rejected outright the revivalistic approach of the Bengal school, even as they opposed the academic styles taught at the schools of art set up by the British. In their strong thrust towards modernism, the artists took historical reality into account and found a means of assimilating it into the present. In doing so, they stepped into the difficult terrain of a medley of styles jostling with each other, and from this they were to create their own mode of expression. In this brave new world, the group was to make an elemental search for language, linked as it was with international codes. While the School of Paris modernism attracted because of its fluid, flexible, and inclusive thrust, it had to be rooted in the country of their origin to attain authenticity. Despite the extreme poverty of means at their disposal and living in small, congested spaces in Bombay, the artists would travel long distances to meet at public places downtown like the Bombay Art Society or the Chetna restaurant or by the sea at Marine Drive and hold long discussions late into the night. As Raza recalls, what we had in common besides our youth and lack of means was that we hoped for a better understanding of art. We had a sense of searching and we fought the material world. There was at our meeting and discussions a great fraternal feeling, a certain warmth, and a lively exchange of ideas. We criticized each other's work as surely as we eulogized it. This was a time when there was no modern art in our country and a period of artistic confusion. The first exhibition of the group took place in Baroda in February 1949, and a little later in July, it was held in Bombay and was inaugurated by Mulk Raj Anand. In the catalogue of the exhibition, Souza put forward the proposition, "Today we paint with absolute freedom for content and technique, almost anarchic, save that we are governed by one or two sound, elemental, and eternal laws of aesthetic order, plastic coordination, and color composition." Now, as elemental as these sounded, they set the paradigms for modernity in a newly independent country. It was inevitably the city that became the focus of the works of the artists, for it is here that their energies had been harnessed. As they went about scouting for material, it was the underbelly of existence that became the prime focus of their work. The founder of the Progressive Artists Group was Francis Newton Souza, and it was his bold distortions and frank exposures of the human body that aroused a strong reaction. Having had a strict Catholic upbringing in Goa, he rebelled against the church and its authoritarian structure. Now, if it had remained at this level, Souza may not have gained widespread recognition, but his violence against the church was enlarged to become an expose of the decadence of the upper classes. In the process, the very morphology of the face begins to form, which would be his trademark. The forehead disappears, the face becomes a rich, rocky terrain, and the mouth a container of sharp teeth. Souza aimed at exposing the lurking evil in man, not in the trenches of war, but at the very doorstep, as it were. In the ensuing years, the heads would be distorted, deformed, molded, to create his painterly arsenal against the rich and the correct. In a major work of Souza's, Death of the Pope, the group is ravished by a destructive anger instead of anguish, as one would have imagined. The dead Pope seems far removed from the grandiose figure, a hollow frame with sinister fangs for hands. The priests surrounding him, while in suppliant postures, convey an inner malevolence and greed. Interestingly, they are dressed in black suits and ties and could be interchangeable with the well-heeled and the rich, with their power, corruption, and greed. The human figure acquired a centrality as an expression of this tumultuous period. As M.F. Husain stated, how can I go abstract when there are 600 million people around me in India? He felt a kinship with the daily grind of the worker, and they emerge in his work as sturdy peasant types with broad, large, rough hands and feet, and upright, firm bodies, and an earthy resilience. These were women who were survivors and who negotiated the outside world and the hurly-burly with great dexterity. Perhaps Husain's active street life as a painter of cinema hoardings led him to intuitively smell what was in the air and speedily transform it into paint. His canvases of this period seem to harness these energies in the very process of transformation. As India transmuted, it was reflected in the works of the painter and became layered with different nuances and shades, from the bazaars to the upper echelons of society, and from the jagged lines of the street to the smooth curvature of the dancer. Husain stated, one reason why I went back to the Gupta period of sculpture was to study the human form. In the East, the human form is an entirely different structure. The way a woman walks in the village, there are 3 breaks from the feet, the hips, and the shoulder. They move in rhythm. The walk of a European is erect and archaic. An associate of the group, Tyeb Mehta, was to evolve his earliest images around the rickshaw puller and the trust bull, both as symbols of ordinary beings who are violated incessantly. But it was his paintings of the falling figure suspended in space, truncated by the diagonal, which ruptured the form and also held it together, which became emblematic of this sense of being fractured and also transcending violation.
The image is not there. Yep.
This is it.
Now it's there. Now it's now.
As the form, broken into splintered pieces, came together on the other side of the diagonal, its conjoined body created a metaphor for survival despite the tremendous odds that it had to face. The falling figure, with its animated, almost cinematic movement, allowed the human form to retain a multiple periscopic effect, which in a sense was the symbol of wholeness. Following a residency in Shantiniketan in 1984-85, a suite of powerful paintings of the goddess Kali followed, which were grounded in Indian mythology and with universal connotation. For she destroyed evil and resurrected the heroic form. This was to lead to a series of paintings on Mahishasura, where he depicted the goddess Durga both interlocked in battle and also engaged with a buffalo. Mehta's work continued to resonate with the act of survival against great odds, paving the path for ensuing generations. Now, the earliest works of Krishen Khanna concerned the marginalized and the deprived, which he articulated in his Struck series. Night reveals black huddles moving into the darkness. In these paintings, the plight of migrant workers huddled in trucks like bundles of objects and painted in monotones drew attention to the infinitely unchanging situation. Indeed, the artist's consistent attention on the plight of the ordinary person on the pavement, carrying loads to their work or lying asleep in the outside in the winter cold, became poignant reminders of the marginalized man despite the heady years of independence. In one of his best-known works, the famous Bandwalas, we have the Bandwalas in their ragged costumes and brassy instruments, and are a moving reminder of the dispossessed, where their bright gear contrasts sharply with their own deprived state. In a sense, these Bandwalas are anachronistic to our society, yet they are accepted by society, according to Krishen. In the Bandwalas over the years, the bodily stances and postures sensuously reflect the experiences of those in the fringes of society and their immense and heroic struggle to overcome their situation. As a counterpoint to the figurist was the artist Syed Haider Raza, who began as a landscape artist and progressively turned more and more non-representative. An underlying thread in all his works was the transformative relationship with the life around him. He was to use brilliant hot colors drawn from the miniatures, but also the burning tones and the searing sensations of his land as freedom began to be accompanied by memory. The lashing reds, yellows and browns of the desert were recreated in Rajasthan. That's Rajasthan. The surface aflame with colors. Rajasthan, awash with influences of Mewar and Malwa miniatures, is recreated again and again to resonate the recurring climate of experience. The later Raza turns towards using the bindu or the circle as a metaphysical concept, a symbol of the still center within himself and of cosmic energy. The darkness with its radiating energy held a special meaning for the artist, as did the daylight with its sights and sounds. When the darkness became enclosed in a circle made in vibrant gestural strokes, framed by brilliant colors, it seemed to touch the center of the universe, as it were. The emergent image of the circle within the square became pivotal to his work. The frame of the canvas itself would have red, black, and yellow, interlocking and unfolding, at the center of which, ensconced within a square, would be the throbbing dark circle. By the late 80s, there is an enlargement of the theme as he began to make paintings where the seed is like the womb of the earth, containing within it an infinite potential for life. Akbar Padamsee's metascapes burst upon the scene in the mid-80s with dramatic landscapes where asymmetric planes of color such as mountains, valleys, sky, water, reversing the natural order. His series mirror images are diptychs which combine metaphysical landscapes with their dialectical opposite, based on the premise that the visual experience is akin to the mirror image, where the object together with its reverse forms the whole. The iconicity of his figures, Shiva and Parvati or Christ, were bold delineations with prophetic or anguished nuances. The painting Lovers, this one, got him hauled to the courts in Bombay in 1954 for depicting an obscene image and corrupting public morality. Despite this, Akbar refused to bring down the painting from his exhibition and fought the case, where he argued that the particular gesture of intimacy was necessary to establish the relationship of love between the couple. It took him a whole year to win the case. The lonely, alienated individual is placed within the configurations of the city in the early works of Ram Kumar. The lines slowly dissolve into the cityscape itself, and mostly these are of Banaras, where tightly veiled houses totter on the brink of distraction. This leads Kumar to make abstractions with sweeping lyrical strokes of ochre brown and ultramarine blue with a poetic distillation, this one. In his later works, there is a somber allusion to broken structures, a brittle beam, a shag of wood, a bit of roof. In these he seems to have come full circle in the very works which nestle the sense of alienation with which he began his compositions. A strong abstractionist, V.S. Gaitonde made large stretches of color intercepted by darker areas which reflect nothing other than themselves. It was the very surface which was the sensuous preoccupation of the artist, and he modulated paint on it as if it was the very object of his passion. Gaitonde's color areas are translucent and create an underwater ambience with beams of light penetrating the depths. His work, evocative of subliminal depths, are also known for their spiritual quality and a sense of silence that is meditative and deeply reflective. The works of the progressive artists and their associates, as we can see, varied from each other, but the artists were bound together by their intent to carve out a place for modernism in India. The fact that it was rooted in India while being affiliated to international modernism was as unquestionable as was its widespread popularity within the country. As Souza pointed out, if modern Indian art is hybrid, what is the school of Paris? Matisse is Persian, Van Gogh is Japanese, Picasso is African, Gauguin is Polynesian. Indian artists who borrow from the school of Paris are home from home. The raw strength of the works testified to its validity as a forum for articulating an indigenous modern. As an exemplar of an alternative modernity on the international imperium, it was to create an equation with Paris, London, and New York. Thank you.
कैसे चलता है? ऑन होगा उसको।
मैं करता हूँ।
Well, you got an overview of what the progressive artist group in the first moderns, as it were all about. And we will have now the first of the papers, and it is by, I'm looking at the wrong side, by Rohan Yadav, who's from Ayodhya. That's remarkable. Modernist Masters of India, Rethinking Legacy and Influence in Post-Independence Art Discourse. Go ahead.
Good morning everyone. So my topic is the making of Indian modernism, histories, perspective and F.N. Souza contribution. So my research objective is focused to understand the evolution of modernism in India and its connection to nation building. It also examines the forces shaping Indian modernism, including nationalist tradition, Western influences and elite discourse, and the exclusion of subaltern vices. In the last, I focus on F.N. Souza as shaping Indian modernist vocabulary. So, in the introduction, Indian modernism, belated hybrid and shaped by anti-colonial context, formed through negotiation between the Western form and post-colonial identity. So, avant-garde movement challenged colonial and institutional norms, defined by imitation, adaptation, and resistance. rather than copying Western style, European style. So Geeta Kapoor in When Was Modernism argued that Indian modernism was not just an aesthetic style but a historical condition tied to India's modernization, industrialization and post-colonial nation building. So modernism, modernity and modernization and modern are closely tied to Western history. For non-Western nation, especially since the 19th century, becoming modern meant imitating Western social, economic, political and cultural models. The idea that some nation reach modernity earlier, other later, created hierarchies. This led to labels like Indian modernism, African modernism and Mexican modernism. So shaping of Indian modernism or historical background of Indian modernism की बात करें तो Indian modernism emerged through a interaction of the Western ideas and Indian tradition during colonial rule. Unlike the West, Indian modernism focused on cultural and spiritual reform rather than industrialization. So spiritual and cultural reform movements such as Theosophical movement inspired artists toward spiritual evolution and universal harmony. जिसके की फिगर श्री अरविंदो, जद्दू कृष्णमूर्ति and Ramana Maharshi and innovation थे. Social and religious reform movement played major role for promoting Indian modernism. So Raja Ram Mohan Roy, Brahmo Samaj promoted rationality and women education. Swami Dayanand Saraswati, Arya Samaj emphasized monotheism and national awakening. Rabindranath Tagore further modernized these ideas with the national reinterpretation of Hindu texts. So Swadeshi movement encouraged Indian artists to reject Western academic realism and revive Indian traditional styles, supported by thinkers like Anand Kumar Swami, E.V. Havel and others. Japanese philosopher Okakura Kakujo brought with him the idea of Pan-Asianism, a belief in cultural unity among Asian nations to resist Western imperialism. So European modernism entered India through the 1922 Bauhaus exhibition in Calcutta, exposing artists to abstract, non-realistic style by Paul Klee, Wesley Kandinsky and others. So phase of Indian modernism की बात करें तो first pre-independence and second post-independence. Pre-independence में revivalist phase and contextual modernism, and post-independence में Nehruvian era, nation building and cosmopolitan modernism. So dialogue define Indian modernism. Indian modernism emerged through intense debate between Western influence and indigenous tradition, between the revivalism and experimentation, shaping a unique artistic trajectory. तो कुछ इसमें जो एंग्लिस्टिक थे और ओरिएंटलिस्ट इनके बीच डिबेट था, जैसे फॉर एग्जांपल बिनोय सरकार जो यूरोपियन मॉडर्निज्म के प्रमोटर थे, उन्होंने इन द फ्यूचरिज्म ऑफ यंग एशिया मैगजीन में क्रिटिसाइज किया बंगाली स्कूल को फॉर द बीइंग कंजर्वेटिव एंड एंटी मॉडर्न की वजह से. एंड E.V. Havel believed that through modernism, modern Indian art could only emerge from Indian tradition. He collaborated closely with Rabindranath Tagore to revive classical Indian aesthetic. So revivalist phase में जिसको लीड किया रवींद्रनाथ टैगोर ने, नेशनलिज्म मॉडर्निज्म बना जिसमें अजंता म्यूरल्स और जापानीज वास्ट टेक्निक और इंडियन मिनिएचर से इंस्पिरेशन लेकर आर्टिस्ट ने काम किया. So while this movement was anti-colonial and spiritual, it was still modern in its indigenous and ideological search of authentic Indian identity in art. Led by figures like E.V. Havel, Anand Kumar Swami and Rabindranath Tagore in the late colonial period, it emerged through India's encounter with the Western art, colonial modernity and debates on Orientalism versus nationalism, sought to construct a distinct spiritual and culturally rooted Indian visual identity. So these are examples of Bengal School of Art. First is Bharat Mata by Rabindranath Tagore, second is Ras Leela by Shikhendranath, and third is Extinguished Flame by Abdul Rahman Chugtai. So तीनों जो पेंटिंग है वो मुगल मिनिएचर, अजंता एंड जापानीज वास्ट टेक्निक की कॉम्बिनेशन है. So critiques such as W.G. Arthur describe Indian modernism as offshoot of European modernism and argue that realism was imposed through colonial art education. जो स्टार्टिंग आर्ट स्कूल्स में पहले सिखाया जाता था. The Bengali art journal Rupam first discussed Indian modernism, noting that it did not emerge organically but developed in response to colonial influence. So this is the Rupam magazine edited by Oshi Ganguly. So Yashodhara Dalmia ma'am argued that discourse of modernism in India is filled with the complex projection and contradiction that are difficult to fully understand. Yet she suggests that even if modernism had not naturally developed in India, it would have been created because it had become a cultural necessity. So Sant Niketan और early modernism और contextual modernism की बात करें तो जो Sant Niketan के आर्टिस्ट थे उन्होंने वेस्टर्न मॉडर्निज्म और प्योर हिस्टोरिकल रिवाइवलिज्म दोनों के मतलब अगेंस्ट थे एंड दे डेवलप्ड ए कॉन्टेक्स्ट सेंसिटिव मॉडल रूटेड इन इंडियन लिव्ड रियलिटी. सो टैगोर ने वाल्टर ग्रोपियस को भी एक लेटर लिखा दैट इंडिया हैज ए लिविंग क्राफ्ट ट्रेडिशन सो इट शुड नॉट जंप ब्लाइंडली इनटू इंडस्ट्रियल मॉडर्निटी. टैगोर अपोज्ड इनह्यूमन वेस्टर्न इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन इन आर्ट. That's why he appointed Nandlal Bose instead of Aminathan Tagore. So Nehruvian era modernism में state support like Lalit Kala Academy promoted modern art and sparked debate between the tradition and modernity. Critics like Richard Bartholomew Mulk-Razanand and Jaya Pashami helped shape and promote modernist idea. So Keku Gandhi, artist and art collector, play a pivotal role in the promoting modern art from 1940. He funded Camel Frame, showcasing young artists like K.H. Ara, S.H. Raza, K.K. Herber and M.F. Husain. Indian modernism emerged with the special in the political realities unlike Western modernism, which emphasized individual expression. Artists adopted modernist style to address nationalist themes like partition, nation building and India's cultural and historical context. So cosmopolitan modernism by the 1940 younger artists such as Souza, M.F. Husain, S.H. Raza and Tyeb Mehta, later known as member of Progressive Artist Group, rebelled against the sentimental nationalism of the Bengal school. Other artists collective like Calcutta, PAG, Delhi Silpi Chakra and 1967 artist group helped define Indian modernism. Realistic theme related to religion, sexuality, poverty and urban alienation focused on urban modernity, post-war politics, fragmented human condition and Indian social realities were explored. Indian modernism became hybrid, a combination of Western technique and Indian theme. Artists used the expressive power of European modernism but rooted their work in Indian social reality. This hybridization reflects that scholars like Partha Mittal and Geeta Kapoor describe cosmopolitan modernism, an art practice negotiating between the metropolitan Western modernism and local Indian cultural identity. So F.N. Souza का एक कोट है कि beware bold and full of fire, beware forging a modern Indian art with a blast. So F.N. Souza, pioneer of Indian modernism, founding member and key theorist of Progressive Artists Group, he rejected academic realism and colonial morality in art. He introduced a bold modern visual idioms to post-colonial India. Used a painting as a critique of religious hypocrisy, class inequality and social repression. So theme and style की बात करें तो उनकी style very much expressionist, linear, anti-naturalistic and deep psychological है. Thick black outlines and contorted body and intense emotional color है. Used distortion, irony and symbolism to question power and moral authority. He created a neo-romantic Western style infused with Indian social and political content. Theme and iconography की बात करें तो recurring motifs like Christ, crucifixion, nudes, urban poverty, violence, sexuality. His work from the early 1950s explored controversial theme, in particular religion and sex, which according to writers and art critic Yashodhara Dalmia would turn into uneasy companions. Blended European modernism with the Indian sensuality and moral critiques. His art visualized post-colonial anxiety through visceral emotion, sometimes violent, sometimes erotic. So these are paintings by F.N. Souza. First is titled Separate en Masse 1940 and second is Crucifixion. Very much similar with Paul Klee. एंड क्रूसिफिक्सन जीन मिचेल बास्कियाट से बहुत सिमिलर है. बोल्ड ब्रश स्ट्रोक है और एक्सप्रेशनिस्ट. थर्ड इज लवर इन द पार्क, ऑयल ऑन द बोर्ड. Influence and legacy की बात करें तो developed an anti-colonial modernism that questioned social order rather than merely depicting it. Opened pathway for radical individualistic art beyond nationalism or traditions. Remain center to discussion on identity, sexuality, faith and dissent in Indian modernism. According to John Berger, Souza's style was deliberately elliptical, essentially expressionist in character, but also drawing on the post-war art movement and the element of British neo-romanticism. So these are earlier painting by F.N. Souza. First is Mithuna and second is self-portrait, जिसमें उन्होंने इंडियन स्कल्पचर लाइक खजुराहो से इंस्पिरेशन लिया और क्यूबिस्टिक फॉर्म से उन्होंने कंबाइन करके अपना अलग आर्ट स्टाइल डेवलप किया. सेल्फ पोर्ट्रेट में उन्होंने खुद को एंटी हीरो आउटसाइडर एंड रिबेल एंड साइनर रेदर देन ग्लोरीफाइड आर्टिस्ट की तरह रिप्रेजेंट किया है. रिफ्लेक्टेड ईगो, often fragmented and masked life, symbolizing next is Supper at a Mass with the Believer and the Skeptic, 1958, oil on canvas. And next is Birth painting by F.N. Souza, जिसमें पॉल क्ली का एकदम इन्फ्लुएंस आता है. इनकी मिडिल टाइम की पेंटिंग्स हैं. बर्थ में बोल्ड रिप्रेजेंटेशन ऑफ फीमेल सेक्सुअलिटी है, डिजायर एंड रिप्रोडक्शन, combined eroticism with the religious symbolism, challenging moral norms, expressive distorted figure, so psychological tension rather than beauty. Last page के उनके cubistic landscape है, title oil on board and house monotype on paper. So critiquing Indian modernism की बात करें तो Indian modernism जो कुछ हद तक ग्राउंड रियलिटी को नहीं रिप्रेजेंट कर पाया. सो वेस्टर्न सेंट्रिक फ्रेमवर्क होने की वजह से जैसे ट्रीटेड एज डेरिवेटिव ऑफ यूरोपियन मॉडर्निज्म, लोकल हिस्ट्री एंड कॉन्टेक्स्ट ओवरलुक्ड, एलीट एंड अर्बन मॉडर्निज्म प्रोड्यूस्ड विद इन बोर्जुआ मेट्रोपॉलिटन स्पेस, फोक एंड ट्राइबल विजुअल कल्चरल एक्सक्लूड कर दिया गया. एंड स्टेट कंट्रोल मॉडर्निज्म था. इसमें नेहरूवियन पॉलिसीज इनकरेज्ड यूनिवर्सल एब्स्ट्रैक्शन, स्टेट इंस्टीट्यूशन से डोमिनेंट आर्ट प्रैक्टिस और सोशली डिस्कनेक्ट भी था एक तरीके से. तो फॉर्म पोलराइज्ड ओवर सोशल रियलिटी, ट्रामा, लेबर एंड लिव्ड एक्सपीरियंस एंड मार्जिनलाइज्ड थे. सो इग्नोरिंग कास्ट एंड मार्जिन, दलित एंड आदिवासी वॉइसेस एब्सेंट थे इसमें. नो क्रिटिकल एंगेजमेंट विद द कास्ट एंड स्ट्रक्चर था. पोस्ट कॉलोनियल फेमिनिस्ट एंड सबाल्टर्न पर्सपेक्टिव में मॉडर्निज्म कंस्ट्रक्ट बाइनरीज like elite versus folk, urban versus rural, and modern versus traditional. Women artists' labor and everyday practice remain invisible. Religion, linguistic and minority identity are underrepresented. Lack representation of ground reality and lived struggle. In post-colonial and decolonial discourse, Gayatri Seva critique of representation, subaltern cannot speak, help unpack how subaltern folk visuality were marginalized in elite modernist narrative. So these are painting by Zainul Abidin. First is Bangladesh Liberation War in 1971 and second is Famine 1943, जो इंडियन पार्टीशन को रिप्रेजेंट करता है और बंगाल फेमाइन को जिस पार्टीशन के टाइम पीरियड से पहले. So last conclusion, Indian modernism represents a complex and multi-layered artistic shift that reconfigured the relationship between the tradition, modernity and national identity in 20th century. Indian modernism is more self-conscious and reflective than Western modernism because it constantly negotiates with its colonial and post-colonial contradiction. Modernism, in a way of relating to the material and cultural world in a period to unprecedented change with we call the process of modernization. Non-Indian modernist theories offer a critical framework for understanding Indian modernism not as a diverative art movement but as a active reworking of global modernity. Indian modernism was syncretic, secular, revolutionary and bridge between East and West. Indian artists absorbed, translated and resisted Western theories, transforming Greenbergian formalism into spiritual abstraction, Baudelairean urbanism into post-colonial alienation, and Marxist social history into a visual language of national self-definition. Indian modernism therefore should be seen as more modernist, not less, because of its self-awareness about history, development and inequality. Thank you.
Well, there's 5 minutes for any comments or any questions that anybody from the audience would like to raise or offer.
If this is going to be the speed, of the direction for the next 1.5 days, maybe a lot of it cannot be absorbed. So
Okay.
if this is going to be the speed of the direction for the next 1.5 days, probably it will be difficult to absorb all that is being said.
Well,
maybe the time limit of 15 minutes could be increased, or maybe it could be brought down to points or just more indicative. So it will be very, very well done.
well, friends, you have just heard Rohan Yadav speak about, and normally the entire discourse in India, especially in visual arts, is about colonial and post-colonial, as if the modern happened only in this small period. Let me take you back to 10th century. In Darbhanga, there emerges a philosopher who proposes a new concept of Nyaya, the philosophy of Nyaya. His name is Udayanacharya, and he wants to distinguish himself from the Kashmir Shaivite version of Nyaya. So he makes a statement and he says, Te prachina vayam adhunika. They are prachin, ancient. We are the moderns. Just as you saw F.N. Souza's, he quoted. So the word adhunik, which is the common word used for modern in most Indian languages, is being used exactly in the same sense in the 10th century. So the modern started in our tradition in 10th century. 1. 2. To get the entire miniature, the wealth of miniature painting. The miniature painting came to us from Persia, like the so-called, a lot of modern art came to us from the West. So similarly, it came to us from Persia. But what we did to the miniature painting? In Persia, being an Islamic country, it was not possible to paint God. Islam doesn't have gods and goddesses. Thanks for it. We have too many of them in Hinduism. But what we did was that we started painting these gods and goddesses and their episodes and the historical episodes and mythological episodes, etc., on a single small painting. And we started apprehending immensity of time in so many space divisions. Many of these space divisions that you later saw in the moderns, especially in Tyeb, Akbar and Raza, take the cue from the miniature. Also the color, their sense of color and their sensitivity to color comes from the miniature. So how is it that we are caught up to looking at the modern? In fact, one can almost venture into saying that there are two kinds of modernism. There is a modernism already in existence which the colonial system tried to suppress by sideline, which comes from the 10th century, which goes through the great Bhakti poets, it goes through Amir Khusro, to Kabir, to Tulsidas, etc., the miniature painting, the birth of Khayal Gaiki, which is a new form of music, even the birth of Drupal, which is a new kind of music, etc. All this is taking place. So there's tremendous creative tumult, and we are being modern in our own ways. So there is a whole tradition of so-called modernity, which tradition later produces a Mir, Taki Mir or a Ghalib, etc. It continues to produce writers and painters later, even in the so-called colonial, post-colonial period. So I suggest to you, to the art writers, that we should have a more historical perspective than merely getting caught into the colonial and post-colonial divisions which come too handy and which have, according to many, have failed to respond to a lot of other elements which existed. The second point is that perhaps yes, we were, in his paper he says that the moderns were obsessed with the West in a certain sense. Yes, they were. But remember, when the Progressive Artist Group came in 1947, this was a very very distressful period in the Indian nation. The country is going to be free, but it is going to be partitioned. And three, that the communal tension was its highest pitch. So many lakhs of people were going to be killed on either side. It is at then that Progressive Artist Group is established. The first three are Souza, Raza and Ara. So one Christian, one Muslim, one Hindu. They co-opt three others, Husain, another Muslim, and two Gade and Bakre. And one of them, I don't know who, is a Dalit. One of them, Bakre or Gade, one of them. So here is the 6 founding members coming together. Let us not forget that this is not this is the time when everybody is hating everybody else, etc., and what is happening and all that. At that time, these 6 came together and created. So our modernity, whatever may be its so-called modernity, whatever may be its pitfalls and inadequacies and shortcomings, some of them have been pointed out by him, that we did not take into account caste, we did not take into account the folk and tribal. You did not take into account folk and tribal art until Swaminathan made a museum in Bharat Bhavan and for the first time displayed, gave equal status to Pema Hatya, Bhuribai, Mittibai as to Husain and Akbar and all that. So it happened in a long, long way. But let us not have a narrow view of modernity. And I'm personally a little sick of this post-colonial. The word enrages me beyond no ends. As if our existence, Indian existence, has been colonial and post-colonial. As if we did not exist before that. What rubbish, what nonsense. This is intellectual, again, poverty, bankruptcy. Because then you are ignoring all that which has happened before. And we have been, time and again, we have a very interrogative tradition. So if interrogativeness is an aspect of modernity, post-colonial or colonial or whatever, we have been interrogative from the Vedas. The Nasati Sukta is an example where he says, who made this? He said, when there was no light, there was no darkness, there was no presence, there was no absent, there was no being, there was no non-being. What was there? And he says, oh, maybe he who has created this universe would know and then acts. Maybe even he does not know. So we have our skepticism starting from the Vedas. So let us look at all the Upanishads are question answers, all the 6 classical philosophy, 4 of them do not talk about God. We then give birth to 3 more religions, which are dissident religions from Hinduism. Jainism, Buddhism, Sikhism. And Jainism, Buddhism are godless religions. What more modernity you want from where? So, my short point is, not so short, it's a long point, that the notion of modernity needs serious reconsideration. And it would tell us that what we think is limitedly modern is vastly modern and had existed in our tradition for a while. We have questioned the given structures, the given answers, the given ethos, and this is not something which the moderns have taught us. This is not something which the colonial masters have taught us. Thank you very much. We go for a second. Oh, yeah. So the second session will be for you. We will draw.
Thank you so much, everyone, and it was the comments, and of course thank you Yashodhara ji for taking us through the keynote in which you widened the canvas of modernism to a century before, and thank you so much for this, taking us through each of the 7 masters and grounding the entire colloquium very, very wonderfully. So thank you Ashok ji, thank you Rohan ji. Just one thing, a convener's privilege. I just want to caution everyone to just one thing, and that is, please, when you're looking at the idea of modernism and modernity, please note the difference between modernity as historical, as progress, as industrial progress, and as a term, and modernism as a movement. One is influenced by the other but cannot be interchanged with the other. That's it. So we are going to the next session, session 2, which is on Ram Kumar. The paper presentations are by Anushka Pandey, Surabhi Shubham, and Anamika Khatri, and we request Yashodhara Dalmia ji to please take the chair.
Friends, I will speak about a few salient features about Ram Kumar's works, and then we have 3 presentations. So, as I mentioned, he was in the forefront of the modern art movement in India, and one of the key artists who introduced and enhanced it in the country at a time when modern art itself was relatively unknown. His involvement with structure, color and form helped contribute to modernism. His training in Paris under André Loth and Fernand Léger, where he also became a member of the Communist Party, and along with his very significant association with the Bombay Progressives and with the Delhi Shilpi Chakra, provided him with the necessary professional alignments. Be short. In the early years, his lonely, alienated individuals, and as Ashokji mentioned, it was a very difficult time, with the partition and violence. So the post-independence period had forlorn figures with their gaunt faces and melancholy eyes, which provoked a sense of unmitigated poignancy. Yet the significance of these paintings lay in the skillful placement of the figure, wedged carefully in a semi-industrialized landscape with its crooked houses, badly constructed streets, and jutting overhead electric cables, providing a perspectival distance to the situation of the common man. Then these works evolved into cityscapes, and the most well-known of these is his Banaras series. In the 1960s, along with Husain, I might add, he visited the sacred city of Banaras, and these, the city itself led him to make monochromatic cityscapes with tightly wedged structures, devoid of human presence and held together, teetering on the verge of collapse. If Varanasi is seen as eternal and timeless, these are cityscapes with houses eroded by time, with peeling walls and broken roofs. Yet it was also held together by a tensile, fragile frame. Finding the representative form too confining, Ram Kumar moved towards abstraction, and the houses dissolved into large sweeping strokes of grey, black and white, and the wind-swept landscape seemed to be moving almost of its own volition towards a larger vortex of seething movement. Greater freedom of composition followed as these strokes of paint became lighter and attained buoyancy in ochre and ultramarine blue waves. The lyric sensuousness of these strokes would be drowned in a bed of white as he moved towards minimal representation. The artist had internalized the shimmering landscapes of his childhood in Simla, as well as what he had experienced during later visits to Ladakh. In the late 1980s, Ram Kumar returned to painting Banaras, his interest in architecture leading to careful observation of forms such as roofs, domes and arches. This was also the result of seeing tombs based on Mughal mausoleums which dot the city of Delhi. In the subsequent years, Ram Kumar's somber works see the emergence of vibrant wedges of reds and greens as he attains an even greater freedom. The lyricism of the work is matched by disciplined structuring, which lends an inner harmony and grace to his paintings. And the fusion of private and public spaces which characterize his language make it distinctive. When asked if his short stories, which have been published in several volumes in Hindi and also translated into English, had any bearing on his paintings, He stated emphatically that each had its own place. Yet both the short stories and the paintings reflect the humble, humdrum, ordinary lives of people with the pitfalls they face and the resilience they demonstrate. To end finally in Ramkumar's own words, when you are in your studio, you draw blank, then you start making some drawings and create certain forms. It is how you're going to develop them, how you're going to evolve them, and in what way they become important. So you continue, and that I realize is the most important thing. I feel it goes within yourself rather than looking at Banaras or Ladakh or anything. Friends, this is just the gist, and now we will have Akansha Pandey scrutinize the different phases of Ramkumar's work, which she has characterized into distinctive periods. She states that as these glide one from the other, there is an underlying connectivity which brings the significance of his works and for the times to the fore. Akansha? Oh, sorry, Anushka, sir. Yeah. So can we have all the panelists please come up? There's Anushka, there is Surabhi Shubham, and there is Anamika Khatri. Please come.
Good morning, good afternoon everyone. Thank you Raza Foundation for inviting me to present my thought on the remarkable artist Ram Kumar. Please forgive me if any mistake I may make. Now let's just embark on the exploration of his artistic journey together. Ram Kumar, a pioneering Indian artist. He has left an indelible mark on the country's art scene. He was born in 1924 in Simla, Himachal Pradesh. Kumar's artistic journey spanned over 7 decades, during which he transitioned from figurative to abstract art. He was known for his evocative landscapes and deep philosophical undertones. One of the finest collections of his artwork is held by the family of the late Harish Kullar. This artwork featured in the book Gems of Indian Art. Ram Kumar artistic journey began with a master's degree in economics from Stephens College, Delhi. Kumar artistic pursuit led him to Paris, which we all know that is known as the hub of artistic innovation. His time in Paris was instrumental in shaping his artistic freedom and growth. Now let's just talk about his works. His early works, as we talked earlier, that he's transmitted from figurative to abstract, so his early works are figurative, that capture the struggle of urban life. The image shown in the presentation is an example of his figurative artwork. Kumar abstract art gave him freedom to experiment and inviting the viewer to explore new vistas of imagination. The major themes of Ram Kumar artworks are human emotion, landscapes, and abstraction. Human emotion is basically his figurative work, which features dull and lost faces, reflecting his fascination with human face and its emotions. In his landscape, we can see the landscapes of Banaras. I will explain it afterward. In abstract work, Ram Kumar paintings depict landscapes in an abstract manner with natural elements like lands, trees, skies, and water. In 1960, Kumar made a trip to Varanasi with M.F. Husain, one that changed the way both of them looked at art. The two stayed at writer Munshi Premchand's ancestral home. They decided the morning after breakfast in Varanasi that Husain would go in one direction and Ram Kumar will go on the other direction, and they could come back in the evening and draw whatever they saw. Their impressions were very different, as we all know that Varanasi being a city of contrast of birth and death, and so on, both artists responded very well to the city. Ram Kumar's artistic legacy is well documented through various exhibitions, publication, and auction records. Here an overview of archival material related to the artist. Exhibitions retrospective. Ram Kumar had a retrospective at Icon Gallery in London and New York and Badhera Art Gallery in New Delhi. He had participated in many group exhibitions like Eternal Landscapes and The Progressive and Associates. He had published so many famous books. Few of them are Ram Kumar, A Journey Within, 1996, Ram Kumar Selected Work, 1950 to 2010 by Badhera Art Gallery, and one more book is The Face and Other Story, 2004 by Ram Kumar. Ram Kumar auction record. The artwork Vagabond sold for $11,61,000. The artwork often sold for Indian rupees of 4,82,25,000, and the artwork family sold for Indian rupees of 3,50,25,000 Indian rupees. Number of painting. Ram Kumar created over 5,000 paintings during his lifetime, showcasing his incredible productivity and dedication to his art. Exhibition. Ram Kumar participated in over 50 exhibitions, both solo and group, in India and abroad, demonstrating his commitment to sharing his art with a wider audience. Award and recognitions. He had received numerous awards and recognition for his contribution to art. Here are some notable achievements. He had received Padma Shri in 1972, Padma Bhushan in 2010, John D. Rockefeller Third Fellowship awarded in 1970, Premchand Puraskar in 1972, Kalidas Samman in 1986, Lifetime Achievement Award given by the Government of Delhi, Fellowship of the Lalit Kala Academy awarded in 2011. Sadly, Ram Kumar has passed away in 2018, leaving behind a seminal legacy. He played a significant role in shaping the Indian art scene, and his contribution will always be cherished and celebrated, and it will continue to inspire artists and art enthusiasts alike. Ram Kumar's artistic genius will never be forgotten. Thank you so much for exploring the artistic journey of Ram Kumar with me. I extend my sincere thanks to the Raza Foundation for giving me this opportunity to represent my presentation in front of such a wonderful audience. Thank you.
Thank you, Anushka.
Thank you.
And now we have Surabhi Shubham, who explores the language which moved beyond the shift from figuration to abstraction and revealed a deeper ethical and affective response infused by his disillusionment with the post-independence situation. Surabhi?
Yes, ma'am. I have a mic now.
सो रहे हैं या लोगों को डिस्टर्बेंस होती है आप कह रहे हो सब कह रहे हैं
Namaste. My name is Surabhi Shubham. I'm an artist and I have also a master's degree in history of arts. So, I'm going to present my paper on Ram Kumar and see his work. Okay, so I'm not a PhD scholar or researcher, so I'm not really sure at how to write a paper or research or present a paper in that sense. But yes, when I started reading about Ram Kumar, I witnessed a few words, terms related to his artwork. That was silence, stillness. It was everywhere. Everybody was talking about the stillness inherent in Ram Kumar's work. So, in my paper, I tried to understand that stillness, what is everybody talking about? And that is my research paper, where I am trying to examine silence in Ram Kumar's artwork. I'm trying to examine silence not as emptiness, but as a deliberate artistic gesture through which Ram Kumar redefined modernist expression. So, my questions that I seek answer to was, what do I mean by silence? Why is silence central to Ram Kumar, and why does it matter in modernism? So, talking about Ram Kumar, Anushka has also shared some of the briefs about. Anushka has also shared some of the briefs about the introduction of Ram Kumar, the basic lifestyle and how he progressed. So I'll just try to minimize it yet. So when I started Ram Kumar, I understood him as a person who was very quiet, very personal. I'd say he was also an economist, right? He had a very good job in banking sector and very handsomely paid also. But then he left his banking job and took his career as an artist. He was also an author, so we can say he was an introvert who was a thinker and he liked to write. So when we think of him as a painter, we see that he has been an introvert person, and his painting reflect that silence, or say his personality. That's why it's important to study or understand Ram Kumar in terms of his personality or as a person, what he was in his life. He was not an artist trained from Shantiniketan or College of Art, but a person coming from an economics background. So, but in India, he met, at one point in his life, he met progressive artist groups like Raza and Husain, and in their company, he moves to Paris to actually try to understand or study about art under artists like André Lord and Fernand Leger. After that, so when we see Paris back then in 1949, we see that there was that post-war scenario where people were actually struggling with the, sorry, I'm quite nervous. Anyway. Okay. So what is happening here is, in Paris, people, actually artists, they have lived through post-war scenarios, and they are trying to express their feelings through their art forms, right? So we are talking about expressionism here, social realism here, and so in their artworks, thank you so much. So in their artworks, we see that the artists are trying to display the real, the struggles of people, common people, for example, unemployment, or how their hopes are destroyed, or people working at a very low wages, or something like that. So Ram Kumar witnessed that, like all of the artists there. But what he does differently is he's not painting the exterior of the scenarios that he's witnessing. He's going inward because he's a thinker. He's an introvert person. He has an introvert personality. So he is going beyond the exterior or outer complexion of the things. And for example, the anxiety, the sadness, the deprivation, the uncertainty that is there everywhere around the landscape. So he chooses to focus on those aspects even when he returns to India. So we are also struggling with post-independence era where the scenarios are not very happening. We had hopes while getting independence. We were thinking a lot about the future. We were very hopeful, but then we had our challenges. We had struggles where our nation or the aspirations that we had didn't stood up with all the expectations that people were having. We were also struggling with unemployment. We had far-stretched hopes that were not fulfilled back then. Refugees, people from post-partition, people from Pakistan came to India and they had nowhere to live. They were tents where they were residing and looking for jobs. The uncertainty was very much prevalent in the landscape. So when we look at the Ram Kumar's initial works, these uncertainties are very much evident. For example, if we look at the yes. So I would also like to mention a point where I mentioned that he was also an author. a very good one. So when he is coming back to India in 1952, he writes his first novel, that is Ghar Bane and Ghar Toote. So there he is painting the loneliness or uncertainty, inherent in post-independence India. So his brother, that is Nirmal Verma, he says, okay, so these were the things he wrote in his book. But then when we look at his artworks, so these people, they seems like they have come out of his textbooks and come into his, entered into his artworks. And his brother Nirmal Verma mentions that the people in his stories slowly worked into his paintings. And when we look at the works like The Vagabonds, painted in 1956, the medium is oil, we see there is this, okay, so the subjects, the solitude figures standing at the foreground of his artwork in the initial era, we witness that these people are solitude people, perhaps clerks, perhaps refugees, or some ordinary young people looking for jobs or roaming around, trying to find a better future or struggling with their uncertainties. So, and when we look at the background, we see a landscape made of geometrical figures or something. The clouds are very much grey and filled with, I guess, disappear. So this is, when I'm talking about, what I'm talking here in this paper is my interpretation based on what I have read around Ram Kumar's work, or what I have understood of it. So what I see here, if I look at the eyes and overall the composition, I see this person. He is someone perhaps very sad, okay, very disappointed, and in fact the background, the landscape, the town behind him, it's like it resembles his overall personality. It's very much dark, I'd say, and even in fact the next artwork done after in 1957, just after that, it's all blue, and even here we see the sad, empty eyes. Again, the similar empty landscapes, the architectural stuff, buildings and all, and the colors are like very bluish, or say very sad and very constrained colors. Yes, but the solitude is something that is very common around his work. Yes. Okay, so yeah. So after looking at the initial works, I again started questioning myself that what is the silence we are talking about again. So this image came to mind. It's a random picture captured by some, I don't know the photographer's names, but I'll mention the link where I got it. So this, so does it happen to you when you, at least it happens with me, when you are in a crowd, very noisy place, or perhaps the traffic is there and lots of things are happening at the same time, and you stand in the middle of it. So after one point, all the noises, they vanishes, and you find a very grounded place in your brain somewhere where there is this silence. You don't hear the noise anymore. So that is the picture I try to express that feeling in this picture, through this picture. And this is what I think, according to me, this is what Ram Kumar's artworks display, where all the emotions, all the struggles, or all the chaotic, chaos in emotional chaos that going around in the landscape back then, that gets settled down in the works of Ram Kumar. So that is what I interpreted. Again, moving on. So there comes a time when, again, with him, Husain, he visited Benares. So he goes there, and the first experience that I found it in a catalog published by Vadera Art Gallery, where he writes that visiting Benares, his first experience was that an experience that profoundly shaped his artistic imagination. In one of his writings he recalls, I had gone to Benares for the first time about 35 years ago. It was in the middle of winter, and I had reached the city late in the night. The dimly lit lanes were deserted and gave an impression of a ghostly deserted city. Except for the occasional howl of stray dogs, all was quiet. I thought the city was inhabited only by the dead and their dead souls. As he continued to explore the ghats, this first impression of death and desolation transformed into a vision of haunting vitality. Wandering along the ghats in a vast sea of humanity, I saw faces like masks bearing marks of suffering and pain, similar to the blocks, doors and windows jutting out of dilapidated old houses, places, temples, the labyrinths of lanes and labyrinths of the old city, hundreds of boats. I almost saw a new world, very strange, yet very familiar, very much my own. So after reading this, I could visualize, the old Benares, where there's this winter night, kuhase and every fog is there, and he enters into the city where he witnessed the old dilapidated buildings of Benares. If you have ever been to Benares, you can relate to this thing. The ghats, the silent boats, the dogs barking at somewhere around the city. Okay, so this was the vision, and after this point, after talking about this, when we look at his artworks, the solitude figures, the lone figures at the front of his initial artworks, that vanishes, and we get to see these artworks. These were done after. These were the initial artworks done after Benares, where we see use of flat planes, again minimal figuration, and that also gets merged into the background of the city. Narrative, again, the sad people, or they are almost missing. The composition, it transforms in a way. Again, we see here the colors, like even the colors change. The dark gray clouds, they are missing out here. They are more brighter, right? And we see a 2D flat surfaces where we can almost imagine the Benares city, the buildings and all, but yet we don't actually see the the lanes and everything. Okay, so this is another artwork. These are the boats. Again, he's trying to paint the Ganga. Okay, so now moving forward, after Benares series, we see in his later works, we see that these works are more meditative and almost as silent, as if as an artist he has learned to listen to the silence, where we don't see any actual representational buildings or blocks, architectural stuff. It's like even brush strokes are very minimal if you look at this. It's like broad plains, perhaps somewhere like Himalayan Ladakh region. In fact, he visited Ladakh and Himalayan region at the end of, at the later stages of his career. And this is what we see, and this is the most beautiful painting I think I like it the most. And yes, the even colors are more lighter. It's very meditative, I feel, and sometimes I feel I should not try to interpret this artwork. Just look at this beautiful thing and just get lost in it. So it never starts from anywhere, it never ends, it never goes to anywhere, it's just still there. And this is something I feel like the Ram Kumar, wonderful artists like Ram Kumar could have done it. So this is what I interpreted about the silence. Thank you so much.
And finally we have Anamika Khatri, who will speak about the life of Ram Kumar and its relationship with his works, delving into the stories behind these artworks.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much. This presentation here, everyone present here is Raza Foundation, and I would like to thank Jyoti ma'am for this opportunity. Okay, as Saurabhi and Anushka, my companions, have already told a lot about the artist. I would like to say Ram Kumar was like the shepherd of the alchemist book, if everybody knows, because he was searching peace and solace, and he was looking all around. He went to Paris and to different countries in different artworks, and where he found that in his own country. in Banaras, in spirituality that that Indians are talking about, as the sir mentioned. Indians are talking about from years, from Vedas. So what I believe that artists are emotionally very overwhelmed. They want to express their emotions in a form, maybe music, writing, dance, or paintings. So yes, as Sauravi mentioned, he was emotionally very overwhelmed with the situations of post-colonial era. And those situations, let's talk about one thing, that if I'm not in a situation, I don't know how to experience it. Okay, so Ram Kumar, the paintings we look, जिसमें बहुत ज़्यादा पोस्ट कॉलोनियल एरा का दिखाया गया है कि कैसे अनएम्प्लॉयमेंट था, पॉवर्टी थी, ही उसमें वो रहे उस वक्त, क्या पॉवर्टी थी, बट वो तो बैंक में जॉब कर रहे थे. How is that now कि वो आर्ट उन्होंने क्यों चुना? I read in a book and in the audio interview of Vinod Bharajwaj said that that time his brother Nirmal Verma was facing some hardships in settling down in his job or things. So somehow he was influenced by those things, and in one of the story, a story that never got written, is a short story by Ram Kumar. In that he also speak about sitting in a house where the mother is yearning out of sorrow that what will happen next about the brother. Okay, this is a short story I got about the artworks he was focusing on in his starting period. And then after meeting Raza, he got influenced to go to Paris, as that was a Makkah in words of Ram Kumar at that time. So when he moved there, he faced hardships, financial hardships, and I recently had a short interview with Vinod Bharajwaj sir at College of Art. If he remembers, he came to our college. I'm from College of Art. So he came and I asked him about his time. He told me a short story that when Ram Kumar used to go home by evening, there was a pastry shop. And the smell used to come very delicious, but because of financial hardships, he couldn't afford that thing. So, being a solution-oriented Ram Kumar, he changed his street and started going from behind. Okay, so what I felt after listening to the story, that he was looking for the solutions in his painting as well. He started his painting with themes of poverty and post-colonial traumas, and after that he moved to a totally different journey of spiritualism. Okay, so I will show my slideshow after I talk to you about the whole story. And another thing I was researching while reading about Ram Kumar was the writer and painter working simultaneously together in their whole journey? Although Ram Kumar stopped writing after he chose painting as his career, yes, they were, because he always carried a small diary in his pocket, and in one of the Priyag Shukla's essay in a book, Pen and Ink Drawings, which carries 30 drawings of Ram Kumar signed, there is a article in which he says that I lived in Ram Kumar's studio for some time when he came to Delhi from Calcutta. So whenever Ram was writing about something and Priyag Shukla came out of a sudden, he used to hide his notebook. He didn't wanted Priyag Shukla to know. maybe he didn't wanted. Okay, so maybe he didn't wanted to, as Yashodhara mentioned, that he was an introvert. Yes, he was. We all know that he was shy and wanted that silence. Maybe he did not wanted his stories or his emotions to show publicly or except in front of anybody or the people who know. So these were some stories I get to know while researching on Ram Kumar. And although I just loved his work, abstract work, though I have not talked about his works much, his abstraction, his forms and colors, I would like to sum up his works. That his figuration, it's my own interpretation by the way. So he started with figurative work in a very, I will say, blackish palette. Okay, and his Banaras years, when he started his Banaras paintings, the palette was still somewhat grey, and one of the Hungarian critic also quoted him as a dull Ram Kumar at that time. Let me show the artworks. 1 second.